So, just a little housekeeping and a few quick notes on the WebEx platform. So on your right, you should see a couple of different panes, or some systems that are referred to as pods. The first pane has a list of participants, and to the right, if you hover to the right of your name, you'll see a microphone icon. I'm going to mute the mics and then ask you to unmute periodically during the session, and that's just to reduce feedback. You know, otherwise you hear potato chip bags crunching, or sometimes you get an echo. We'll also be using the chat pane quite a bit in this session. So if you could right now, on the right-hand side of your screen, make sure that the drop-down arrow has everyone selected, unless, of course, you'd like to send me a private message. Okay, so drop-down menu, make sure you have everyone selected. Okay, so I typically start a webinar, as I would with any other type of delivery format, with some sort of icebreaker. And I often use this one, which is, please type in the chat pane one interesting thing about yourself or one interesting experience you've had. So if you could all do that in the chat pane, that would be terrific.
I'm sorry.
Oh. So let me repeat that. If you could type in the chat pane one interesting experience you've had or one interesting thing about yourself. Are people thinking? Okay, Teresa, you're a big zoo fan. Oh, Darren, you went to Germany. Darren, where in Germany were you? I just unmuted your mic.
It's actually Duran, but oh, can you hear me?
Yes,
hello?
I can.
Oh,
hi, Darren.
We went to the southwest part, right near the Black Forest.
Oh, I bet it was beautiful.
It was, yeah. It was winter. It was super cold, but yeah, it was beautiful, and I got to meet my partner's family and friends, and yeah, it was great.
Nice. All right, and we have Allison. You live in a log house that your family built. How interesting. Okay, how about Tina and Carol? Tina, scuba diving on not just a sunk ship, an intentionally sunk ship, Columbia River, okay? And Carol, oh, you just went to your mom's 85th birthday in Arizona. Nice. All right. And, you know, with icebreakers, so we're going to run this webinar in two ways. There'll be sort of the meta information about webinars, and then I'll also be giving you an example of a training webinar. So use your own judgment on what works with an icebreaker. The only time this one has fallen flat for me was with a training webinar for ASQ. They are the, as Darren knows, the Six Sigma people. I don't know, maybe kind of a serious crowd. So use your own judgment. So tonight we're going to look at a few different ways to engage participants, a couple of training approaches, and some tech tips, because technology can really sink you with webinars. We have one learning objective, and that's to identify strategies for learner engagement in webinars. So I'd love to hear from you all. Have you ever participated in a training webinar? I know a lot of us have participated in them for meetings, but what about training webinars? If you could type in the chat box, yes or no, if you've participated in a training webinar. Okay? Tina, in theory, it was a training webinar. Okay, so it looks like we have mixed experiences. So those of you who have participated in training webinars, or even webinars in general, how would you describe those? If you could type in the chat pane, what adjectives would you use? Were they boring? Were they convenient? Were you busy working on other things? Okay. Tina, lecture only and not engaging. Yes, that is a common experience. And Teresa, difficult to catch up. Okay, so the pace was maybe too fast. Allison, it seemed like they were just lecturing from afar. Yeah, sometimes it's almost like this disembodied voice that is at the other end. And Darren, great when it's relevant information. Yeah, if it's really targeted to the audience and the audience has inherent motivation to learn. Okay, so you've pointed out some of the problems with webinars, lecturing, and they are the same problems with other forms of learning. In classroom-based learning, straight up lecturing really is not very effective. The stage on the stage approach is often adopted in webinars. One-way communication, no back and forth. Boring slides, one bullet point, another one, and then you're checking your email before you know it, working on other things. So what's the fix? One, use images and graphics wherever possible. You know, it depends on your content, not always possible, but use it wherever you can. Vary your intonation. The reason why monotone is so boring is because we like novelty. As you know, we've looked at over the past 5-6 weeks, in terms of our perception, change catches our attention. Same thing with voice patterns. So if you pause, if you go up and you go down, it grabs people's attention. Make the webinar a conversation. And I'm not talking about webinars with 100 people. That's really a different ballgame. But if you have a webinar with 20 or fewer participants, you can really make it a two-way communication, a conversation. Is there any downside? Any downside to having all that communication, making it a two-way street? There doesn't have to be. Just curious. In my mind, there's an upside and a downside. What I have found is that when I use the chat pane a lot, it gets people in a conversation, but without the problem of having one person dominate the conversation. And those of you who have done classroom training, there is inevitably someone who dominates the classroom, and then you have to manage it during the entire training session and do it diplomatically. In a webinar with the chat, everybody gets to participate. Carol, hard to read the audience. Yeah, it can be, especially when you first start facilitating webinars, you feel like you're speaking to an empty room. What really shifted for me is when I started turning it into a conversation with the chat pane. Then I felt a lot more engaged to participants as the presenter, and hopefully participants felt the same way. It takes longer to engage participants rather than just doing a one-way communication, but I think it's well worth it. Okay, so we're going to do a little demo. By we, I mean me, myself, and I, on increasing employee motivation. Here are the learning objectives. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is think about 2 things that you find motivational in your workplace. What are 2 things that motivate you? If you're not currently employed, think of a past position that you've had and something that motivated you. And if you could type those into the chat pane, that would be great. Results. Okay, Darren, I think you'll be interested to see what research shows us on that. Anybody else? Tina, yeah, being acknowledged, recognition, goal-oriented, and that kind of builds on what Darren said. You have a goal and you meet it. Teresa, helping someone. Yeah, a lot of people have a service orientation, and that's what motivates them. And being appreciated. And Carol, results. Allison, working on a project with a group, piloting new materials or tools. Okay, so you like to do new things, blaze trails, and you like to do it with other people. Okay? All right, and now I'd like you to shift slightly and think about a manager that you currently have or that you've had in the past who was stellar. And tell me one thing that manager did that you found motivational as an employee. Carol? Hey, Carol, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, if you could say a little bit more about the manager who just kept moving forward.
I guess basically we had a scope and sequence to be moving through, and when the team got stuck somewhere, she just continued to move us forward. We didn't quit. We didn't say, well, it's not going to be good enough. Let's change the direction here. We just kept moving forward to the ultimate finish line.
Okay, so sounds like she was a pretty positive person and a
Very
problem
positive.
solver.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Teresa, you had a manager who cared about what you did. Nice. Darren, gave employees autonomy. This is an interesting one. The research, I used to teach organizational behavior, and the research shows that one of the most unmotivating things you can do to an employee is give them responsibility with no authority and no autonomy. So, Darren, that lines up with the research. Yeah, empowering. Tina, a boss who's real and has integrity. Yeah, that's inspirational. Uh-oh. Oh, Teresa, now you can hear. Okay, terrific. All right, now think of one less than stellar manager that you've had and list something that that person did that you found very demotivating as an employee or a team member. Tina, flaky. Okay, yeah, somebody who doesn't follow through on things, doesn't remember things, promises to do something and doesn't. Oh, Darren, overly cautious, afraid to try new things. And that can make you feel pretty stuck as an employee. Anybody else? Oh, Allison. Goes along with integrity, not honest. Oh, wow, so suspicious of other people. Aren't you glad you're not working for her anymore? Okay, Teresa. Okay, and Teresa, your comment really gets to integrity also. And Carol, inconsistent with coworkers, from workload to praise. Oh, so being treated equitably is another factor in terms of employee motivation. And I'm just going to mute the line there. Okay, so let's see what the research says, various surveys that were done. I'm just going to open a poll here. You all should see a poll about a McKinsey survey. If you could take your best shot on which of the following was not identified as one of the top 3 non-financial motivators. Okay, which one was not identified? Okay, I'm going to close the poll. Okay, you should all be able to see, and we got a lot of different answers on this one. The correct answer is actually friendly coworkers. Now, of course, with motivation, there's an individual piece to it. Not everyone is motivated by the same things. But I found this list interesting. That, I mean, praise and commendation by immediate manager, I think that's pretty intuitive for all of us. Attention from leaders, that is interesting. You know, realizing that the people who work for you want exposure to people higher up, and opportunity to lead projects or task forces. People want additional responsibility and they want the chance to work with people outside of their immediate work group. Any thoughts on those? If anybody would like to unmute your mic and chime in on any of those. Okay. Okay, here's another one. A Harvard Business Review study of the factors that affect employee morale and motivation. This one was interesting because they did, it wasn't just a survey, they actually followed, I don't remember how many people, but it was quite a few. They actually had them keep a diary. So it was a more in-depth study than just a simple survey. So in your chat box, and you may have to click on the little triangle to the left of your chat pane to make it expand again. Let's see. Can everybody see the chat pane? Uh-oh. One moment, please. Okay. Okay, and everyone can see the slide? Okay, which one had the most significant positive impact? Teresa, recognition? We have several people going with recognition. Okay. Coworker support. So it is actually progress and achievement. Yeah, Darren, that's what I thought of when I saw your earlier response, that the research is actually in line with what motivates you, which is progress and achievement. So what does that mean? If you're a manager, what should you be doing? Any thoughts on what you might do differently? If somebody would like to unmute their mic and chime in.
Margaret, this is Teresa.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a bit what's this referring to as far as the progress, achievement?
Yes.
How this has to do? I was just thinking how this has to do with the most significant positive impact to the employee. Is it referring to the employee? As an employee myself, I made some achievement.
Yeah. So they did a study on what makes employees feel engaged and motivated at work. And they found that when an employee has the chance to make progress or achieve something at work, achieve goals, that affects their morale more than these other factors.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anybody have thoughts on this?
I think the facet of progress and achievement is that somebody can see a result.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you've got something tangible or intangible, but you feel like you've accomplished something that is within your control and it's not about anybody else.
Yeah, and it makes you feel good about yourself too, typically.
Right.
Yep. Thanks, Tina.
Okay.
Any other comments? Oh, go ahead.
It's Theron. I was thinking that a manager could have a very clear like performance review plan with the worker. These are the specific things that I would like to achieve. That way you have a checklist, and at least for me, I feel like I'm continuously making progress. So for those moments where you're at, you have barriers, even getting over one small barrier, you feel like, okay, I'm still moving towards my goal.
Yep, that would be very motivational. Have clear goals, clear plan. Any other thoughts? Okay. So this one, there's no guessing at answers. I just wanted to share with you. Actually, I'm going to put up a slightly different version of this. same text. Give you a minute to read it. So, which two of these do you feel like you have most control over as a manager? And we're going to do something a little bit different this time. If you look at the toolbar, it's the third toolbar down from the top. You'll see an arrow, a letter T, a crayon. If you could click on the arrow and then click again next to the two items that you think managers have most control over.
Margaret, excuse me, Teresa, my screen is empty. Nothing on my screen.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, which tag we are?
I
didn't touch anything. Just suddenly, first I saw your screen say, I can't remember the topic, but then suddenly it disappeared.
Huh. It looks like everyone else is able to see it, so I'm not sure, Teresa, what happened.
Oh, okay. I'm back. We are on the screen say why employee quit, right? Is that
yes.
Okay.
No, it's not that. It's actually, yes, it is. Ask people their reason for leaving their employer. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Sure. Okay. So, Tina, lack of respect, support from supervisor, and Allison, I know you had selected that one too. Job duties were boring, no challenge. Yeah, so 2 and 4 are the ones that we have the most control over. I mean, sometimes we have no control over promotion opportunities. Sometimes we do, but often we don't. All right, so what to do about that? Something that you can do to make work more interesting is called enriching jobs. You can change the types of tasks employees do. You can give them tasks for which they have some sort of affinity. I was working for a medical guideline company at some point in my past, and there was a young woman who was working in an admin assistant role, and she was really working below her level, and she was kind of bored. So we gave her responsibility for the monthly newsletter that went out to clients. It was amazing to see the turnaround in her level of engagement. She was thrilled to be doing the newsletter, and it just breathed new life into her as an employee. See, you can give them a chance to interact with other people. If they want to be on an interview committee with a work group other than your own, great. Something else that we forget is that people like to know how their work fits into the bigger picture in an organization. You know, what's the context? So, if you could chat in your chat box, one thing that you could do to enrich the job of someone who works for you, or if you have no employees, think about some way that a manager could enrich your job. Any thoughts on that? Think of an employee that you have and what you could do to enrich their job. Oh, Allison Nice, ask you to serve on a district-wide committee. Yeah, and you know, it is amazing. I don't know about you, but a lot of times when you're really swamped, it's like, oh, one more thing to do. But then when you get out and about and meet new people, it's really energizing. Carol, more communication about direction and progress. Yeah, so and that gets back to goal setting and giving people feelings of accomplishment. Any other thoughts? And if you'd prefer to unmute your mic instead of using the chat pane, feel free. And Teresa, give them an opportunity to engage in tasks that they feel important. Okay? Yeah, in addition to their assigned tasks. Tina, any other thoughts on that one?
Margaret, I cannot hear you again.
Tina, I don't want to put you on the spot, though.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Tina, you going to pass on that one?
I'm finishing.
Okay. Oh, Darren, that's a nice one. Community give back. So even though it's slightly different than big picture, it's similar in a way, you know, in terms of doing something meaningful. And I can hear Tina typing away.
There it is.
Okay. Oh, so go ahead. I'm going to let you.
So in my role as a dean of students, I have 2 security officers who work. I supervise them, but I like to work as a team. And so one of them's new, the other one has been at the school for like 15, 20 years. You know, so he's sort of mentoring the new employee. At the same time, I don't want it to be like, well, this is how we always do it, or have always done it, so this is how we should continue to do it, because it's a new building, it's a new situation. So trying to find a way to give the new employee or the new security officer an opportunity to take leadership, but, you know, what is the issue to identify?
Well, that's a really interesting approach. And that, oh, go ahead.
Because then it could stretch both him and I. Me in the sense of I have trouble delegating. This is basically my first supervisory position. I have trouble delegating. And he has he hesitates to take initiative on things that he sees.
Probably because he's new.
Correct.
And it's a really nice approach, because if he's identifying the issue, then it makes you both branch out, because you're not just constraining him with what you know and what you see.
Right.
Nice.
It's so hard to conceptualize.
I thought it was very well put. All right. So, name one action, if you're currently managing people, name one action that you'll take within the next month in your position to motivate someone who works for you? If you're not in a managerial role, if you could come up with one thing that you would like your manager to do within the next month that would help you feel more motivated. And feel free to either unmute your mics or chat in the chat pane. You might be getting a little chat pane weary, so do feel free to unmute your mic if you prefer. Full circle here. Assign me a task that I can apply from what I've learned in the e-learning course. Nice. Oh, Allison, you can't hear. Uh-oh. Can you hear now? Oh, I think so. Okay, great. And Allison, do you need me to repeat what the question was? I'm not sure when your sound cut out. Carol, your manager could report your progress, set the next goal, and identify ways to get to that goal, and set a check-back date. Goals are amazingly effective. It's a simple thing, and yet so effective. And it gets back to feeling successful and feeling a sense of achievement. Any other thoughts from anyone? I'm guessing that maybe Darren and Allison are still typing, possibly. We'll just give you a few more seconds here. Oh, right, Darren, I'm sorry. Yes, green light on the design project. Okay, Allison, it's a little too abstract. That is just fine. Okay, so that is the end of the session on that was designed to teach managers how to motivate their employees. So I'd love to hear from you about what you thought worked well in the session, what you would change, and any tips to share. So if you could unmute your mic if you'd like to speak, or chat in the chat pane if that's more comfortable. Okay, so in terms of doing a training webinar, what do you think worked well? What would have made it a better experience for you? Okay, Darren, the polling, yep, and Allison, the immediate results are energizing. It's kind of fun. One little note, one little warning about polls is people really like them, the first poll or two. Then they start to get poll fatigue if you use it too much. Mm-hmm. Carol, the chat pane feedback would help to gauge the audience response. Yeah. The other thing about webinars is if you don't keep people busy in a meaningful way, not just with silliness, they will be checking their emails, guaranteed. There's no accountability. In a regular classroom, you have eye contact and you have the social norms of being rude if you're not paying attention or at least pretending to pay attention. With webinars, you don't have any of that, so you have some heavy competition. Teresa, the audio part is not stable. That is one downside with webinars, is sometimes the technology can really sink you. Carol, oh, you couldn't find the tool to participate in the poll. So I probably needed to do a better job of explaining where to find the poll. And Teresa, you felt engaged. Okay, you felt it was engaging. Yeah, Tina, random selection. I felt like this session needed a little bit more verbal response. But I also don't like to put people on the spot if they're not comfortable. Oh, okay. Well, I actually did feel like it could use a little bit more. The challenge, one of the reasons I use the chat pane is because there's no nonverbal communication, you end up having people often trying to chime in at the same time, and it gets kind of messy and chaotic. So that's why I use the chat pane a lot. Also, there's a certain energy that comes with a bunch of responses coming in at the same time. I initially found it, a little bit distracting, but I've come to really like it.
Margaret, this is Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
Yeah, hi. Just out of curiosity, so as a presenter, would you prefer to see the participants through camera, or say if you have a 10, around 10. Today is like a 1, 2, 3 or 4 is a small number. But say if you have around 10, between 6 to 10, if I were a presenter, I probably would rather not to see participants' face, because my screen probably would fill with all the faces, right? So
well,
what's your thought about that?
Yeah. I'm kind of on the fence on that one. I do a lot of meetings by WebEx, and in meetings, I want people to have cameras because it strengthens the relationship, because they're often on meetings with people we have an ongoing relationship with. With training, I think it can be a little bit distracting to the rest of the participants. But just to let you know, Teresa, with WebEx, one thing it does nicely is as soon as someone else starts speaking, it switches the camera to them. So you don't see everyone's at the same time.
Oh,
so it's really what you're comfortable with as a presenter. So I don't know. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
So like today is I didn't turn on my camera. Did you see anyone else faces?
No.
Oh, you don't. You didn't. Okay.
No.
Okay.
But the system automatically manages that for you, which is nice.
Oh, as soon as whoever speaks, that the camera switches to that person.
Yes.
I see. Okay.
A nice feature of WebEx, sure. Okay. So, Darren, it seems it's great to have a partner helping monitor. Yeah, a partner is great to have. Not always possible. The other thing is testing the features and functions. I had to log in as a participant on another computer and test some of this stuff beforehand. Allison, do you find that people in the Pacific Northwest are less likely to pipe up? I hesitate to speak if the session is not chatty already. You know, I don't know. I will say that we had about the same number last Friday, and it was a chattier group. There was at least one person from the Northeast, so I don't know whether that makes a difference or not. I think some of it is just personal comfort. Darren, you'd feel badly if there were tons of comments and tons of content as well. Darren, can you unmute and say a little more about that? And Allison, the Seattle freeze thing is funny. Darren, I'm going to take you off mute here.
Oh, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Well, I was thinking if you had a fairly large group and there were lots of comments coming in, and you were also trying to go over, whatever the topic is, it would be difficult to address comments and questions coming in while also trying to keep your mind on whatever you were talking about.
It definitely takes some getting used to. And you can miss stuff easily too. I've done it enough that I'm fairly comfortable with it, but the first few times were pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I would lose my train of thought constantly.
Well, there is one other nice feature of WebEx, and that is that you can display your PowerPoint notes in one of the panes.
Oh,
So I found that to be very useful, especially when you're ping-ponging around between the chat pane and your content.
Right. When you have larger groups, do you normally have someone helping you with the comments?
Yes. It's almost impossible, with a really large group. I actually don't do this format for over 20 people.
Oh, okay.
With larger webinars, something you can do is you can ask the questions still, but you don't debrief the responses. So that gets the wheels turning for the participants, but debriefing responses with 50 people is just virtually impossible. You can pick out a couple of comments and debrief those. But it's not the same as making people feel acknowledged.
Right. Yeah.
So just to recap, we had a little icebreaker, hopefully kept you busy in a content-relevant way. I also asked you how could you apply this? What was your experience? So what was your experience in terms of learning best practices? It's taking what you know and connecting it with new content. And how can you apply it? Asked you to think about things instead of just giving you bullet points. I asked, which one is correct? How does this relate to you? What are your thoughts and suggestions? So the technical aspects, a few tips on that. Guide participants to the webinar tools, and I would say in this case, I should have given you some information about the polls at the very beginning instead of waiting, and then I know at least one of you was a little lost with the polling tool. Always schedule a dry run with someone else or joining as a participant, because as a facilitator, your screen looks somewhat different. In fact, I just did a run through with someone today and discovered something I really hadn't known in terms of how materials were appearing to participants. Anticipate common problems and have things at the ready. So I always have this slide lined up in case participants have a problem connecting with audio, because I know by now what the most common problems are. WebEx does not have breakout rooms, at least with this license. I'm not sure about I don't think they have breakout rooms in any of their licenses. Adobe Connect does. These are really important to practice with actual people to make sure it all works. And as some of you have mentioned, great to have a buddy when you're doing these, especially if you have a sizable number of people. If there's one person that is having tech problems, you don't want it to derail and bore the rest of the group while you're trying to troubleshoot for them. Contingency plans. A couple of things that I've done, if I know who's attending ahead of time and I know their email addresses, I have teed up in an email all of their email addresses, and I have an alternative teleconference line just in case something happens, and a PowerPoint deck on hand, so that if you have to suddenly switch gears, it's not optimal, but it's something. Sometimes, of course, you just have no control. I was doing an informational webinar for 200 people, and it was the first time this was a couple years ago, first time I'd done one of that size. My internet at work went out. Never happened before. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. So, any final questions or comments? Use images, use polls, ask questions, acknowledge people's comments in the chat pane, and do a technical rehearsal. Any other thoughts? I'm curious, would you do a training webinar? Do you think you'll do one if you haven't before? Oh, Tina, what does the recording look like? The recording captures everything. It captures the chat pane and all the comments. Carol, you would do one. Great. Yeah, you'd start small. And Darren, okay, yeah, you'll likely do one too. I think it's a great medium. It gives you kind of the energy and the human connection that real-time communication brings. That in a way that asynchronous communication just doesn't quite do it. Yet it's convenient and people can log in their pajamas from anywhere. Allison, you're intrigued. You looked at Fuse as a tool. Oh, I haven't even heard of that. Allison, would you mind unmuting and telling us a little bit more about that?
Okay, let's see. Am I on? Oh yeah,
You
I got little green waves coming out. I had looked at Cisco WebEx as as a tool for teleconferencing and for doing webinars, and I wanted to see what was happening on the other end of the spectrum. The webinar that I watched, which was an archived one from October, I think, was, as I said, kind of like a lecture with a few PowerPoint slides. The first slide was up for almost 2 minutes before it changed, and I thought,
wow,
there's got to be a better way to do this. So I looked to see what else was out there, and Fuse is really new. It has something Teresa was talking about a little bit, which is that there's a visual of each person who's participating in the webinar or the training, provided, of course, that they have a webcam, that really makes the presence exciting. I was really interested, as I was watching you today, how I was responding to your facial expressions. It was as though you could see me. I was, feeling that affect. I'm really interested in what goes on in people's heads and with their emotional responses when they're receiving input. And I think Fuse is capturing that a little bit. I think, I don't know. I don't know. I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been thinking, you know, when I was doing a webinar, I might, at least at first, want to have a person in the room with me. Even if I couldn't see my audience, if I were presenting an affect as though I were reacting to an audience, then the people who were watching me would see me reacting and react to that. I ran open mics for years and years, and I'm really interested in how you run a room when there's nobody in the room. We should talk.
It's challenging. It's challenging at first, and it is really nice when you get a video image of someone. And I found it interesting, Allison, that you responded to my facial expressions. I know that
I could
when
feel myself smiling, or I could, or feeling quizzical, and I could feel my face, little scowl or a. Yeah.
And you almost feel more accountable, too, even though you know intellectually that I can't actually see you.
You're like, as you say that, you're zooming in, you're getting closer to me physically, It's really interesting.
Any other thoughts on that, on the video? And I'll have to check out Fuse. Any other thoughts on any aspect of webinars? No? Well, thank you all very much for tuning in, and I so enjoyed hearing your voices as opposed to having asynchronous text exchanges. Have a very good weekend. Stay warm.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret.